Hello, welcome back. We are on lesson 360 in the workbook. And some of you have done this workbook more than once. Others are doing it for the first time, and you may be watching this video and wondering about it. What is it about this so-called workbook that everyone's talking about? Well, first of all, not everyone's talking about it, but perhaps everyone in your circle is talking about it. And that's led you here. Welcome. You're exactly where you need to be. You're exactly where you need to be. And in this series of videos, we have started with lesson 1, and we're now at lesson 360. After today, there are 5 to go. And for those who have done this in the past, if you're doing wherever you are right now is where you are, right? You could be on lesson 1 or 28 or 300, I don't know. But you're watching this video today, so clearly there's something for you to gain from this. There's something that you're here to learn or just to think about or show up for. And the fun part for me is I don't know what that is going to be. I'm simply delivering the message, and you'll hear what you need to hear, which is really fun. Isn't that fun? When you know deep down that you're drawn to a message. Right? You're drawn to this thing called A Course in Miracles. You're drawn to this thing called the Workbook for Students, which, as we know, is only one component of this course. Yeah, it's fun to know that you're drawn to something, isn't it? You're answering the call, and you may not consciously have any idea why. That's the most fun of all, is you're learning to relax and trust. So it is, of course, here in the world, something that looks like a process, isn't it? Relaxing and trusting, because it's a choice that we make moment to moment. So with that, let's go through briefly here the idea for today, which is lesson 360 in the workbook. Peace be to me, the Holy Son of God. Peace to my brother, who is one with me. Let all the world be blessed with peace through us. Peace be to me, the Holy Son of God. Peace to my brother, who is one with me. Let all the world be blessed with peace through us. We could all just leave it right there, couldn't we? And it would be fun. But I've got more to say. I often do. I often do. It's so interesting because each one of these ideas that Jesus refers to as a lesson here in the workbook framework, it's an idea. And as we go along in the workbook, it becomes really clear that one could simply recite the idea to oneself and be reminded of who you really are. It's a practice unto itself. Now, naturally, we invite you to go further than that and to extend love and forgive. And it's a very helpful anchor in this format, isn't it? It's beautiful. It's like an anchor in a meditation practice, whether you're using the breath or a mantra or sound, or you're listening to a guided meditation and you're doing what the guide asks you and instructs you to do. Whatever that is, there's always an anchor there such that when our minds run off and we start thinking about a baseball game later today, or we start thinking about that time it snowed on May 13th, 1984. We remember those details, don't we? Or we start thinking about tomorrow, yeah, or the fact that our toe hurts, yeah, my elbow itches, something like that. All of these things, we just notice that our mind has run off and we bring it back to the object of meditation. Again, whether it's the words of a guide or music or a mantra or your breath, whatever it is. Life in that sense, I invite you to see it this way, because it is that way. It's a living, breathing, waking meditation. As soon as we notice that we're distracted by all of the wide apparent variety of the ego's offerings, we just bring our mind back to love. We bring it back to the truth of who we really are. And these ideas can serve as very, very handy anchors. And I invite you, to the extent that this speaks to you, I invite you to look at them that way. They're all, as you may have noticed here, relatively simple ideas. They're really short. I mean, these here, the last 10 or so, are some of the few that are more than one complete sentence. So they're not difficult in and of themselves to remember. It's just the mind gets distracted and carried away. Sentence by sentence here. Peace be to me, the Holy Son of God. I invite you to acknowledge your identity, capital I, self, capital S, the Son of God, the extension of God, God's creation, the thought of God, the Christ. Remember, Christ is properly viewed as not limited to Jesus. It's all of us. It means the Son of God. Peace be to you and to me, because we're one. The second sentence, peace to my brother who is one with me. Yeah, exactly. There is no separation of any kind. We're not separate. Let all the world be blessed with peace through us. We allow here in spiritual practice, in the extension of love, in our forgiveness, in our acts of kindness, in our kind thoughts and gestures, anything that is loving. We're invited to allow ourselves to work through us. We're allowing the will of God to operate through us, recognizing it's our own. We become a channel and a conduit. Again, we're learning to relax and trust in this process, aren't we? We're learning to trust God, our own wisdom. Our will and God's will are one. This is a beautiful idea, and it's a beautiful practice. I invite you, as always, to engage in it. Truly engage in it. And when you notice yourself run off with your social media feed, there's a lot going on, always, then bring your mind back, bring your awareness back. That's what we do. And with A Course in Miracles, you may or may not have looked at other parts of this course, the text that precedes the workbook or the manual for teachers, which follows it. It's not necessarily meant to be done in that order. Most people start, in fact, with this workbook because of its accessible framework. To some, the text can seem abstract at first. I can certainly see that. This course uses terminology in a different way than it's used in common parlance. Atonement comes directly to mind, that idea. And there are others in A Course in Miracles. It has its own language. And in fact, Jesus refers to it quite correctly as a thought system. And we're invited throughout to acknowledge the power of our mind. What we allow into our minds is real for us. Our acceptance of that makes this real. This is from the text here, I'm paraphrasing. Our minds are so powerful that whatever we allow into it becomes our reality. This is why we get so stuck in the world, in political positions, right? In social positions, in arguments, in essence, right? Because when we accept the ego as who we are, we're naturally, by definition, cut off and opposed. So we become all of the time afraid, conniving sometimes, lashing out at other times, but at all times fearful. Ultimately, as we see here in the Course, we're afraid if we identify with the ego, and when we do, we're afraid that we're going to change our mind and cancel the ego thought system completely, like turning on a light in a dark room. That's exactly what happens. We have a choice to change our mind. There is love or fear. There's God or the ego, light or dark, life or death. Which you accept into your mind becomes your reality. Your acceptance of it makes it real. This course is quite simple in a way, despite all of the many lessons. There are 365 of them in the workbook, despite the over 600 pages of printed text using language that may not be familiar to us. It may seem complicated. Spirituality is not complicated because every moment of every day, each of us has this one choice between two options. Everything that we see, all the wide variety of phenomena, of emotions, the range of everything in our experience here in the world, it's all a derivative of our choice in the present moment of love or fear. Having chosen the ego quite correctly fears that you can just as easily change your mind. And you can. This is what Jesus invites us to do. It's what I invite you to do, is change your mind. As we've gone through this workbook, you've heard me say, and you've read, and you may have heard other people talking about the course say things that you weren't taught in Sunday school. Or if you didn't go to Sunday school, you weren't taught by your parents or your biology textbook. It can be quite shocking to have an idea such as, I am not a body, repeated 20 times in a row, which it is in this workbook. It can be quite shocking to entertain and accept the idea that there is no sin, despite what people out there believe. it can be quite shocking, a jolt indeed, to the system to entertain, much less accept, the idea that there is no separation of any kind, which means that even my worst political enemy or my abusive or hostile ex is one with me. This course is a presentation in words, in activities of what is beyond words and activities. It points us to truth and presents it in a framework that we're familiar with, like words, like numerical ideas that build on one another in what seems like a linear fashion. It's up to us to accept truth just as it is. So, in closing, this really kind of sums up the practice of A Course in Miracles. It's you can change your mind. The Holy Spirit and Jesus tell us that all we need is this, what we call in the Course, a little willingness. They'll supply the rest. We simply have to be willing to entertain these ideas, which is all the workbook invites us to do, by the way. You don't have to believe them, but the more you hear them, the better, which is why any teacher repeats himself or herself again and again and again, to the point where it's no longer helpful for us to have the all too common attitude of, that's so yesterday, I've heard this before. I use that tone and inflection to illustrate a point. That's a petulant little kid's voice. It's someone who wants everything handed to them their way, the way they would have it, not the way it is. As adults, we do, when we side with the ego, behave like children. It's true. We define and defend personal territory. And these ideas can be quite radical, especially at first. Nevertheless, there's a reason why you're here. Isn't there? There's a reason why you're drawn to this material. There's a reason why you're curious about A Course in Miracles, whether you even buy or open a copy of the book or ever look at any of the information online ever again. Doesn't actually matter at all. There's a reason why you're here right now. I'll tell you what's happening, and you know this is what's happening. You know it. Whether you choose to acknowledge it or not, you could actively deny it, but you're listening to the call. Isn't that exciting? You're maybe finally, right, listening to the call to awaken. Now, it's up to you to answer. Happily, you have help. I'm here to help, for one. There are numerous other very eloquent and erudite and excellent commentators on this course. Really, they're all available online. It's quite easy to look this information up if you so choose. It's quite easy to do. Here in the 21st century, we have all of this information at our disposal. You have help. Some of you may be involved in a study group. This workbook especially lends itself quite well to a group setting. The idea here is that we share. To give and to receive, as we see in the workbook, are one in truth. We realize we have, by sharing, by giving away, by extending forgiveness, by extending miracles, by extending love, we realize that love is who we are. It's never left us. So you have help. You may have a human teacher. Now, if you follow another religious or spiritual tradition, perfect. Go deep with that and use this material to help inform your own walk. Or if you want to switch, switch. No one's ever saying that this is the only way. This, A Course in Miracles here, is one of many doors. So take whatever I've said that you needed to hear. You'll know what that is. In fact, you knew the instant I said it. And work with it. If you're doubtful or skeptical about it, good. That's absolutely not an issue at all, is it? Kick that around in your mind and allow it to just tumble around and percolate. Allow these ideas to sit. That's all that any of us can ever really be asked to do, because when we answer the call, when we begin to extend forgiveness, is up to us. It may not be in this particular lifetime that you do that. However, because you're watching this video, because you're watching a video about A Course in Miracles, I know that you have begun. This deep longing, this deep pull, this inner knowing is the call itself. So to the extent that you've answered it, fantastic. I invite you to continue to answer. And you, again, have help, guidance, and assistance in many forms. All right. That's what I want to leave you with today. So let's not forget that when we acknowledge that we need guidance and assistance, that we please ask for it. All right. Thank you.